Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the new Amazon series, The House of David. I've been hearing a lot of buzz, both good and bad, so I've decided to dive in and share some of my honest thoughts. Now, we're going to look at what people are saying about it online, why some people are warning against it, and I'm also going to discuss about who's actually behind the production, and we'll explore some of the creative liberties they took when adapting David's story for the screen. So let's jump right in. Now, The House of David, if you're not familiar with it, it's a biblical drama that chronicles the life of King David. Yes, the David from the Old Testament, the guy that killed the Goliath. The show attempts to capture everything from his rise as a shepherd boy to his complex reign as a king over Israel. First of all, as soon as the show dropped, social media lit up. Some viewers absolutely loved the detailed sets, the epic battle scenes, and the high production value. Others are not super impressed. Me and my wife are watching that TV show. My wife really loves it. She loves the whole thing. I'm not like super fan about it, but it's really good and I really enjoy it. I wouldn't say that I'm like super stoked about it. You know, I see people praising the acting, the dramatic storytelling, and how it makes the biblical narrative feel more real and relatable. Kind of like the Old Testament of the Chosen series. On the flip side, there's multiple of comments of people saying it strays far from the actual biblical text and it adds events that are not even in the Bible. Some religious groups are even warning others to avoid it, worried that people who are new to faith might confuse these fictional elements with biblical truth. You know, posts like they're twisting the story just to make it Hollywood friendly. Another person would argue that as long as it sparks interest in reading the Bible, I'm cool with it. So there's definitely a split in opinions. There are a few things that I wanted to highlight. And in fact, Ruslan, he interviews the people that are behind the scenes for this TV show, and I'm going to drop the link below where you can watch it, and I'm going to summarize some of the things that they've shared in that interview, as well as some common knowledge that is online. The first issue that some people have, and that is Amazon's involvement and potential censorship. So viewers are skeptical of big corporations like Amazon funding and distributing this film. Now, Dallas Jenkins and John Irvin emphasized that Amazon gave them full creative freedom and it's legally contracted. Amazon's core principle is customer obsession, and so they're very customer-centric. When they see a large faith-based audience that demands authentic biblical content, they pretty much give the rights and the freedom to the creators to serve Christian viewers, and they don't intend to censor the scripts or storylines. So we don't have to worry that somehow Amazon over there is just going to try to fill in some heresies into that to deceive Christians. The second thing is that there is a depiction of David as a bastard child and other extra biblical material. Now, I'm not going to disclose too many details about that because, first of all, the whole story is based on really the framework that's in the Bible, but they added some stuff. And one of the things that they added that makes throughout the whole season, you will see this reference is of a David being a bastard child. So this whole idea of David being as an outcast or a bastard child, some people view that as they're adding drama that's not in the scripture and it's potentially misleading people. Some people are seeing that the biblical adaptations should not fill in details without clear historical biblical sources. And it's fair, but what creators say about this TV show and other faith-based TV shows is that they see these story elements as creative expansions that don't contradict the Bible's message. The overarching focus is on David's rise, struggle, and faith journey. Anything extra biblical aims to flesh out character arcs, but not to distort the theology. So these creators, they encourage people who watch it to compare the show with the biblical actual text. And if you do read in the Bible, there are some kind of hints. You know, David says that in iniquity my mother conceived me, and some people take that this could mean that David was born out of wedlock or out of the covenant relationship between Jesse and his wife. And the fact that David was not invited when the rest of his siblings were invited for the sacrifice with Samuel could also hint. And there's a few other references. And the Jewish folk tradition really says that David was a bastard child. So these creators who are creating this script, they're not necessarily, while it's extra biblical, they're not actually anti-biblical. And that's the thing what a lot of us have to understand is that extra biblical and anti-biblical are different things. Extra biblical things are pretty much things where they add some elements that are not against the Bible to fill in the creative part. Anti-biblical things would be, if David wouldn't be serving God, or things would be contradicting the Bible. The third thing that I want to highlight is the David and the Goliath spear scene. So when the whole series starts, I think in the first episode, there's this whole idea of Goliath hits David with his spear, and that detail is not found in the Bible. And I'm not gonna, share with you all the things that are happening there, but in the first few, I think, minutes, you're seeing actually David being knocked down, and then it pauses that whole idea of David and Goliath and goes into the backstory of how David got anointed and the whole 9 yards. And so critics, of course, they worry that this implies that David might have lost and have been mortally wounded. An alternative version to this great story where David, comes out as an overcomer. And they say things like, this moment doesn't exist in the scriptures, it's misleading, and it's overly dramatic. Also, they would say that this might be changing the fundamental story to shock viewers and generate buzz. But the creators and the writers of the story, they simply say that this story and the way they portray it, they were simply trying to symbolize David's resilience and his ultimate victory. Dallas Jenkins states that it's not unbiblical or contrary to biblical truth. The Bible doesn't say that David never got nicked. So what they really wanted to do is they wanted to open with a dramatic hook and later reveal David's famous speech. And so this partial reveal prompts viewers to keep on watching. So that's pretty much kind of their creative hook, is to see almost like David almost getting hit, but he's not actually being mortally wounded. The fourth thing that I want to highlight about this TV show that causes a lot of people to really not like it and reject it is actually violence. This does show scenes of intense battles, bloodshed. It's more like a gritty war movie than a traditionally tame Christian genre. Some families expect faith-based media to be completely safe for young children. For example, Samuel's brutal execution of King Agag is graphically shown. Viewers unfamiliar with passages in the Bible might think that the show is exaggerating or actually inventing violence. And they would say things like biblical shows should be family friendly and non-violent, or that this level of bloodshed or brutality is off-putting and not suitable for children, or that prophets shouldn't do that, or it's too disturbing to watch. And honestly, these criticisms are kind of fair. But what you have to understand is that during the time of the Old Testament, especially the writing of book of Samuel and the story of David, it was the Bronze Age. Biblical warfare was brutal. And so the authors and the creators of this TV show believe that portraying some of that reality horrors the source material. Now, it's in the Bible. Like, you read some of the stuff, some of the battles in the Bible, or like Book of Song of Solomon, is definitely not for maybe young children. And that is true, but it is in the Bible. So people who created this TV show acknowledge that it's likely TV-14, that families should decide individually what's age appropriate. The creator of it aims to create a show that he can watch with his own children, though he concedes that each family has different standards. So parents with little children, you do have to be aware that this TV show does show some of the softer side of the brutality and the ugliness of war and bloodshed. And there is some violence there. The fifth issue that some people bring against this TV show is the extra biblical scenes that are made for tension and character development. In fact, both The Chosen and The House of David have been criticized for filling in narrative gaps, personal dialogues, and backstories that are not explicitly in the Bible. Like, David is kind of seen as like a rebellious punk, he's kind of talking back to his dad, storming out of the house. He's also viewed as an illegitimate child. And, there's a whole story on David's mother. I'm not going to highlight what really happened to her in the TV show. The Bible is very silent on that. And critics would say that anything that we add beyond the literal text is disrespecting and actually distorting the scripture. And critics would say that these people who make these TV shows are aiming to spark controversy for publicity. But Dallas Jenkins, he emphasized that they do add plausible moments that are not contrary to the scriptures, and they help viewers to emotionally connect. And they insist they're not trying to troll or provoke people. They're simply using established storylines techniques to immerse viewers. And minor fictional details are not meant to change core doctrines or biblical truths. Here's my take, and here's how I feel about this TV show, or probably even about Chosen, is on one hand, I appreciate high-quality, faith-based or storytelling. The costumes, the cinematography, and overall acting is actually pretty captivating. And if this series encourages somebody who never reads the Bible to finally open it and learn the true story of David, that's incredible. While I also understand why people are concerned. If somebody watches this TV show and thinks this is a word-for-word representation of the Old Testament, that would create confusion. But the producers clearly took creative license, which might blur the lines between what's in the Bible and what's been invented for dramatic purposes. So personally, my biggest recommendation is watch the TV show, enjoy the drama, but then go and read the 1st and 2nd Samuel for yourself and see how it aligns or does not align with the Bible. In this way, you get the real story. So, is the House of David worth your time? If you love biblical or historical epics, you actually will enjoy it. But just be prepared for some added storylines that are not strictly biblical. My hope is that people treat this as a jumping off point rather than a definitive version of King David's life. What do you think? Have you watched the TV show yet? Do you believe that biblical dramas should strictly stick to the text? Or there's room for a little bit of creative flair as long as it points back to the heart of the story? Let me know what you think below.